I'm Kjellberg, the editor of Book Post, here in Astoria today at my partner bookstore of the month, the Astoria Bookshop. And I am with local author Spencer Reece, who we published in Book Post and who has this newish book, The Secret Gospel of Mark. We warn you, watchers, that there's a subway that goes right by. Very convenient to the subway Astoria bookstore, but it means that it goes right by, so we have to pause from time to time. And Spencer is a local author. Can you explain to us where in Queens you live and why you live there?
I live in Jackson Heights, which is just the next town over. I've been here for 10 months, and I moved here for a job to be the priest in charge at St. Mark's or San Marcos, the church in Jackson Heights. Came there in October during the middle of the pandemic.
He had been a priest in Madrid for many years, although he's an American.
Yes.
Spencer and I met at Civitella Ranieri, which is a really wonderful writer's retreat, and it seems like a good chance to thank them for our friendship and for everything they did.
Yes.
Spencer has a new book of poems coming.
I do. I just got off the phone with Jonathan Galassi the other day. It's called Acts, A-C-T-S, after the book in the Bible, and I'm excited about it. I have a book about every 10 years, so...
Spencer's books are very slow in the gestating, so it's a big deal.
This took 20 years.
We had the idea, since Spencer's a local author, of coming here to Astoria and looking at some of the poems he talks about in his book and chronicles
I like listening to you.
So he grew in many ways as a person, and how this transpired along the way, how he was helped along by reading poems to discover himself as a poet, not only, but also to embrace his sexual identity, to become a priest, to embrace sobriety, to come to an understanding with his parents. And through all of this, poems are kind of helping him get through the hard parts and leading the way, or kind of shining a light for him. So it's about the biography of poets, like what they went through to write the poems that they write, but also about how their words dovetailed with his biography. So the first poet, a little bit surprisingly, that he addresses in the book is Sylvia Plath. Part of the reason is that, as I understood it, that her identity as a woman of the 50s helped him to understand his own mother, and also her openness about suicide helped him to address the darkness in his own feelings, and also that you had a wonderful teacher as a young person who introduced you to these like relatively modern poets, which is a little bit unusual in your education.
I just saw my high school English teacher. She's in South Carolina now, and it was great to see her again and remember all the gifts that she gave me. One of them was Sylvia Plath, and it was this version of it. This is a very old copy of Ariel, and I still remember this lettering and the ink, the purple ink. This poem, Words, I remember was one of the latter poems that she wrote before we lost her in February 11th of 1963. Words, axes after whose stroke the wood rings, and the echoes traveling off from the center like horses, the sap wells like tears, like the water striving to reestablish its mirror over the rock that drops and turns. A white skull eaten by weedy greens. Years later, I encounter them on the road. Words dry and riderless, the indefatigable hoof taps, while from the bottom of the pool, thick stars govern a life. I remember, this is a poem where I learned the word indefatigable, because I had never used that. And in high school, I remember reading this, and that's where I first came across this word that I always liked because of the way it sounds. It's such a big word to throw into a little poem. This poem begins with the word axes, and in the book coming up by me, I play on the sound of the word axe, like an act that one would do, and also an axe that cuts through things with force. She really broke into her own sound in this book, and so the formal constraints that she's using of 5 lines, but not with any particular structure, is very emblematic of her here. Also, internal rhymes that she's using, half rhymes, internal rhymes. It's very characteristic for her to write years later I, and then break the line and have encountered them on the road.
Elizabeth Bishop. You kind of get to Bishop when you're more of a grown-up in the book, and you know, she lived with some things that you were living with. She was open with herself about her homosexuality, but maybe not with the whole world. She wrestled with alcoholism, but the poems have so much poise and kind of both gentleness. That's another one I think that a lot of us remember.
Yeah,
I mean, this is the one that
yeah.
was around. It was edited with Robert Giroux, who was her kind of beloved editor, but it doesn't have in it the poem that's in your book. So we will read it.
Okay. The poem is called Sonnet, and it's kind of a truncated, broken sonnet. I mean, it doesn't follow like the rules of a Shakespearean sonnet. So it's a poem in its look that's breaking the rules. Her sexuality, as with everybody's life, was interwoven throughout, but often not addressed, hardly ever addressed in her poetry directly. And here in this last poem, there's an attempt to sort of look at it a little more directly. The rainbow flag out in San Francisco was invented around the same time that she wrote this poem. And there's a reference to a rainbow in the poem. And I just conjecture that perhaps those things were coming to her as she was writing this last poem. So the poem is just about a thermometer that's dropped and that is broken. That's sort of what's happening. Caught, the bubble and the spirit level, a creature divided, and the compass needle wobbling and wavering, undecided. Freed, the broken thermometer's mercury running away, and the rainbow bird from the narrow bevel of the empty mirror, flying wherever it feels like. Okay. And it's somewhat ironic that this poet that did not address her sexuality in a open manner throughout her poems ends her whole oeuvre with the word gay. Homosexuality now, it's almost, I mean, in New York City, it's like amazingly a non-issue and almost not that interesting anymore. So I'm in a different moment than she was, where it was, you know, it was not something she talked about openly. I love her. I love her integrity, her dignity, her brilliance, her intelligence, her exacting eye. It's like a painterly eye. She also did watercolors. I ended up doing that too. I think with Hopkins, what I was thinking about in this book was the great price that he paid for the freedom of gay men and gay women that came after him in the church and outside of the church. And there's such exuberance in these poems for life and for God. He suffered greatly, and I think when I was in seminary the second time, I was just aware of the sacrifices that many, many, many people had made on my behalf. Here's a little bit of Hopkins. God's grandeur. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. It will flame out like shining from shook foil. Why then do men now not wreck his rod? Generations have trod, and all is seared with trade, bleared, smeared with toil, and wears man's smudge, and shares man's smell. The soil is bare now, nor can foot feel being shod. But for all this nature is never spent. There lives the dearest, precious, deep down things, and though the last lights off the black west went, O morning, the brown brink eastward springs, with warm breast and with bright wings.
Oh my goodness, it's a wrap. I'm gonna weep. Spencer.